It's that time again. It's Doctor Who Sunday. We kick back, we relax, and we talk about the one thing that a lot of people love on this channel, Doctor Who. The Woke News will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Switch on the notification bell so that you know I am releasing another video. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed already. I could not run this channel without you. Every Sunday at 4 p.m. we talk about Doctor Who, and it's nearly always chosen by you, the subscriber. To vote on the current poll, please head on over to the post page where you can find it. I release a new poll almost every Saturday at 10 a.m. and the winner will be announced most Fridays. Today we are discussing the Christmas special, The Husbands of River Song, which was voted by you. It is a Peter Capaldi story, and it was written by Stephen Moffat. It was directed by Douglas Mackinnon, and it aired on the 25th of December 2015 to 7.69 million viewers in consolidation. It's Christmas 5343, and the Doctor is on Menderax Delora. He meets a man named Nardole, who is in need of a doctor. The reason why is because they need a surgeon to operate on King Hydroflax, who has the Halassi Androva diamond lodged in his head. He meets the king's wife, which turns out to be River Song. She doesn't recognise him and just assumes that he is a regular surgeon who has come to remove the diamond from the king's brain. However, the removal of the diamond does not go according to plan. River had married the king in order to obtain the diamond. The king overhears the conversation between River and the Doctor, and so he detaches his head from the cyborg. They both take his head and make a break for it. The Doctor learns that River has been trying to look for him and is aware that she is near his timeline, and we see 12 pictures of the Doctor up until Peter Capaldi. River and the Doctor make their way to the TARDIS, where they discover that the cyborg has been cutting off people's heads because he was desperate to get the king's head back. They make a break for it. River pilots the TARDIS to the Starship Harmony and Redemption. There she is meeting a representative of Shaw of the Winter Harmony. His name is Scratch. He's going to buy the diamond. Fleming, who works on the Starship Harmony and Redemption, is bargaining with the cyborg, and he decides he's going to sell out the Doctor to the cyborg. Back in the dining room, when Fleming and the cyborg enter, the cyborg disintegrates the king's head, and Fleming takes the River Song's diary and explains it to the cyborg as a guide to the best replacement head in the universe. It's during this that River admits that she loves the Doctor, but the Doctor will never love her. At the end of the speech, she realizes finally that the Doctor is the Doctor. They get hit by a meteor and the Doctor and River fall to the lower floor. The Doctor takes down the cyborg by putting all the money ball to every single bank onto its little stump, and then joins River on the bridge. Whilst there, River spots the Singing Towers, and she mentions that the Doctor was always going to take her there, but he cancels last minute. Later, she finds out the reason why. She had heard that this would be their last meeting if they were viewing the Singing Towers. However, she does get to spend the entire night with him there, which lasts for 24 years. So my first question is, who likes this story? I have a few problems with this story. It's certainly not my favourite, but I don't hate it at the same time. It's good because it's not your stupid, comical, namby-pamby nonsense that you get with Russell T Davies. There's actually a decent amount of story here and a fair amount of action, even though it is a little bit soapy. Stephen Moffat did make sure to include all that action, even though there was soap bubbles just flying everywhere. It was amazing how many soap bubbles I could see going on there. Now, that probably sounds really harsh in observation, But I just wanted to say that before I do get to the good points, because there are good points about this story. For example, it's the introduction of Nardal. Now, this companion, I don't see much point in. He's good, but should he have been a regular? Probably not. We didn't really need him for the purpose of this story, however. He's good, and I do like the character of Nardal. I know a lot of people don't like Matt Lucas, but I think Matt Lucas is, well, very versatile. They didn't go down the route of humour with him in this story, thank goodness, because I think that is a common trope that you give Matt because, well, he is a comedian. He does sketches and all of that. He had the odd line here and there, but it wasn't really that big of a deal, to be honest with you. I don't think he had a lot of screen time, though. I think he could have had a bit more, but because this was a very much a River Song centric story, there had to be a limit to his screen time. I would have also liked to have seen Ramon used a little bit more in this story as well, but, well, it is what it is in that case. I also think that King Hydraflax was underused in this as well, in my honest opinion. With you, Greg Davis played him. I think this story is what I would call to be a stunt cast story. So if you don't know what stunt casting is when you get a very well-known performer or celebrity such as Greg Davis or Matt Lucas in this case, and what it does is it brings in the money. It brings in people to sit down and put their bums onto the seats. I know that the Christmas specials have a tendency to do a fair whap of stunt casting. But when they do things like that, what I want is to see the actors be utilised as much as they possibly can, especially with someone like Greg Davis, who is a comedian, I think, isn't he? But he does possess some very good acting chops. I think they gave him a bit of a silly character, though. This is the type of character that you would probably have got an actor like Rick Mayall doing, because that would have suited Rick Mayall very much so. I liked the idea that the king had the diamond inside his head. It did seem a little bit out of character for River Song, though, to want him dead. But I'll talk more about River Song a little bit later. I did wonder if they were doing circle theory, which is a writing technique here, because the diamond, obviously it's the main plot device, but it's very prominent in the beginning and it had a very prominent end. And that one small object caused so much trouble in this entire story. And even though it did cause that amount of trouble in this case, it was nice to have the doctor pick up the diamond after the head was disintegrated and hand it over to someone that he didn't know and told him to build a restaurant. Now that obviously he had an ulterior motive with regards to River Song, but he also gave the chance to someone else to make money and make the planet better, all for the right reasons. It's very much well within the character of the Doctor. And I must say, I like this Doctor very much so. Peter Capaldi Doctor has really grown on me recently. Now, the funniest part about the Doctor in this story is when he's holding the king's head to ransom. It randomly, and I don't know why, it made me think of the Tom Baker Genesis of the Daleks, Michael Wisher Davros with the life support system. I don't know why it made me think of that. It just did. You don't often see the Doctor doing these types of ransom moves, but in this situation, it made sense. The Doctor doesn't really like using weapons, and I criticise him for doing so. However, he realized that the head was really important to the cyborg body, so he gave it an ultimatum. And I also like the fact that the Doctor is trying to convince River to not remove the king's head, because obviously it's not right. He shouldn't be doing it. And I would say that this must have been a bit of a shock, though, for the Doctor, seeing River do this, because this is potentially what she is like when she's not around him. And obviously she doesn't recognize him. Now, despite what I'm going to say about River Song later on, I am going to say this right now. I think the chemistry between Peter Capaldi, Doctor, and River is a lot better than his predecessors. I think that could be an age thing. I know Alex is a fair bit older than both David Tennant and Matt Smith. It also makes sense given over the years she has talked about the Doctor not being her doctor. She's been very clear on that. She's always said that he is much older. And so we were led to believe that it was more of a Doctor of Peter Capaldi's age. So I think that's probably why we ended up with Peter Capaldi, because they needed to finish River Song's story. Well, it's not really the main reason why we ended up with Peter Capaldi, but it was probably a contributing factor. I would happily watch these two in something else again quite easily, Peter and Alex. I think they work really well together. I think Alex works well with a lot of people, but this was a really good pairing. Rhoda8592 says, excellent episode. Capaldi and Kingston play off each other perfectly. And I completely agree with that, despite what I think about River Song. Now, I do want to say I am so incredibly thankful to the writing gods for the lack of sonic equipment. Okay, we had that stupid sonic trowel. What was that? And we have the sonic sunglasses, but they did not play a massive part in the story. Thank goodness we actually got some creative writing. What is that nowadays? You all know what I think about the sonic screwdriver and the sunglasses, and well, yeah, they should just do one. They should just go. Thankfully, we had a great blessing in this story. Thank goodness for that. Now, I really enjoyed the fake bidding war that the Doctor and River do in this in order to get themselves out a lot of trouble. They don't just bleep, 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 bleep away for once like they easily could have done. The Doctor also uses the money in order to defeat the cyborg. Okay, yes, it was a simple solution. I always go on about that. But it was better, much, much better than zapping it with a sonic screwdriver. And when they were on the bridge, there was no sonic involved. Okay, yes, it was soapy because they were arguing about her husbands. However, they were pressing buttons, they were running around, getting the TARDIS, and they are trying to do their best, absolute best, to get out of a horrific situation. I would have liked to have seen more intelligent conversation, but I appreciate the action. In the end, it helps them to both escape in the TARDIS, and then everything explodes and they crash land. These types of things make it much more entertaining, in my opinion. I know I have mixed opinions on this story. It is pretty entertaining. The banter is good, and yes, okay, I will admit it does have a tad nostalgic ending. I will say that because we all know what's going to happen to River next when the Doctor sees her in the David Tennant form. For a lot of people who like River Song, and I know there's a lot of people who do like her character, that would make them very sad. And naturally, of course, it makes the Doctor sad. Obviously, Alex can't play it that way because she doesn't know what's going to happen. That's River. But we all know that's going to happen. Daniel Wright says, hilarious romp with incredible banter, thoughtful moments of real emotion, and one of the most heartbreaking yet satisfying resolutions in Doctor Who. I don't do rankings or lists anymore, as I think all things have their value. But this episode is one I will always stop to watch. Alex Kingston was fantastic with every one of the leads, but she and Peter Capaldi had very special chemistry. I really, really adore this story. For me personally, I still think Donna's story is the saddest out of all the companions. That's just me personally. No one has to agree with that. I know people get irritated by Donna. However, I do agree that Alex is brilliant in this story. Her speech that she gives when she's talking about the Doctor is certainly one of her highlights. She would have been building up to that since the very beginning, because she obviously knew who River Song was very early on and what River meant to the Doctor. So I bet she was absolutely chomping at the bit to get that speech done. And it's sad, actually, when we hear River say that the Doctor doesn't love her. You see it in Peter Capaldi's face. He still doesn't say it either, but we see the certain sadness behind him. And this speech highlights the one thing that the Doctor cannot do to someone who will not live to the same age as he would, even though she is 200 years old. And that's what makes it even sadder. Yes, she has Time Lord DNA, which, she understands that, but she also understands that the Doctor can never say it. Other than that, I don't like really any love story in Doctor Who. And actually, no, I don't like any love story whatsoever in Doctor Who. But I think it is something that needed to be said by a regular character, particularly one that's more on the outside, much like the viewer is. I believe one of the reasons why they went down this route in Doctor Who from the very beginning when they brought it back was in order to draw in more females with the soap elements to it. It's one of the reasons why they went with the younger Doctor in the first place. Now, Doctor Who obviously doesn't need that. It doesn't need romance. But I think that's what they were trying to achieve, more female viewership. And we got love. I can't tell you that I love you. We've got unrequited and this. Now then, River Song. Okay. Right. I am going to look up and I am going to pray that I'm not going to be savaged for this. But what I'm going to say has absolutely nothing to do with Alex Kingston. Of course, naturally, you can disagree with me in the comments below. That is absolutely fine. But just to be clear, it's nothing to do with Alex. I do like River Song, but only a little bit. Just a tiny bit. Okay? I find her annoying, actually. I'm sorry, I just said something totally sacrilegious, I know. And now I'm going to have to back that up. Chiggy says, for a River Song centric episode, surprisingly less annoying than usual. I've only watched every single River Song story once, except for 2. Sorry, now 3, because I had to rewatch this one for my channel. It's really difficult to do this review without talking about River Song. However, she's one of my biggest negatives in many respects in this story. Sorry, people. I think this is mostly the writing here. The only story I've ever liked with River Song are the library stories. I find that, well, she's not overused. She's definitely not overused. That's not it. I think it's more the fact that her plotline is very convoluted. And because she's not a regular, you have to pick up where you left off with her, so to speak. And they're always meeting each other out of order. So it made it a little bit tricky. And, well, make of that what you will. That's just my opinion. Her plotline is convoluted. I think I'm going to have to rewatch a lot of her stories in order to make sure I definitely agree with my own opinion. They do make her stupid in this story. River isn't stupid, though. She really isn't. It's always better when River doesn't recognize the Doctor. However, when the Doctor is saying, River, it's me, I am the Doctor, that type of thing, and she doesn't cotton on, it's like, what is going on? You know, I know she's in a head mode of, I need a surgeon. I know that's what it is. But she didn't twig. I remember thinking 20 minutes in, has she really not figured this out yet? Not obviously, like I just said, it's probably because she's in the headset of, I need a surgical doctor. And that's probably why she didn't get it. I also don't like the fact that she runs off with the TARDIS. May sound prudish, but to me, the only person who can fly the TARDIS is the Doctor. I know that River can do it. However, Ramon was not able to find any version of the Doctor. And by the way, I love that photo album that he has of all the pictures of the Doctor. But why would she just run off with the TARDIS? And firstly, now that I think about it, why didn't she notice it was a different TARDIS? That's definitely not the Matt Smith TARDIS, unless I'm going absolutely stark raving bonkers. I don't think it is. Surely she would have noticed. If she knows all the faces of the Doctors up until Peter Capaldi, then she would have known. It just makes absolutely no sense. And each TARDIS is a little bit different in some way, particularly the newer TARDISes. Well, anyway, it just seemed a bit out of character to me for her to do something like that. There is also something that I don't like that River did in this story. She used her dress to catch the diamond down her cleavage, and then she grabbed her breasts. To me, that's not appropriate. I don't think that was a directorial piece. Excuse me. I mean, I don't know if that was a directorial thing, a script thing, or an acting choice. I don't think, however, it was appropriate. Children watch this. I did find it sad, though, that her diary is almost full. That definitely tells the viewer that her time is coming to an end on Doctor Who. That's not before, though, we see the Doctor do some fantastic stuff for her, prioritise River, for example, saving her. She does go back to save him as well, so it was a 50-50, so I will praise that. But he does make the effort. The downside to this is that this is really too short of a story, in my opinion. I think you could have actually made this a little bit of a two-parter. I would have liked it if the Doctor's head was pretty much on the table, so to speak. So the Doctor being captured and potentially operated on so that his head would replace the King's. I know that sounds really morbid, but we would definitely have got something like that with Classic. We didn't get that here. That's a timing issue. In fact, it would have made it more scary, especially when my favourite bit was when Scratch unsealed his head to take out the money to pay for the diamond. That was gross, but pretty awesome. And they sure as heck didn't shy away from that in a Christmas Day story. In this one, that's for sure. So I mentioned that this story is very soapy. And the reason why it's so soapy is because they're writing out River. And obviously, Alex's contract has come to an end. So she has to go. Now, with how they write it out, I feel like they were trying to tie it all in with the first story and how she gets her sonic screwdriver. Now, obviously, the Doctor knows this is going to happen because he knows he sees her in the end, in her last moments of her life. So in order to ensure that she's got it when he meets her in the library, he gives it to her at the restaurant with the Singing Towers. They also make it so that she has 24 years with the Doctor, so it's not an immediate goodbye. However, I do not recall if they mentioned the Singing Towers in another story for River. And I think that perhaps they could have done that in order to tie it in a little bit more and round off some loose ends. I think I am actually going to have to go back and watch the entirety of River Song's arc again, because there's a lot of things that I can't remember now about her story, in particular plot points that relate to the Doctor. And obviously, I know that Amy and Rory are parents and things like that. I won't forget that. But, well, it just seemed that there may have been some things that were not quite right or may have been missed out. I had that feeling anyway when I watched it for the first time, and definitely when I watched it for the second time. So, yeah, I will have to rewatch that arc, because I'm not really entirely sure if they were tied together all that neatly. This is why it would have perhaps benefited from an entire series with River Song as the companion, despite what I think about her, even though I do like her a little bit. Because I think it would have rounded it off a lot more better to see her with the Capaldi Doctor. It probably would make more sense. It would have also added a lot more to the chemistry between Peter and Alex. And also, what was that ending? And they lived happily ever after. At the end, that is not what I consider to be Doctor Who. That was a bit weird. I didn't really like that bit. However, it does get swept away in sections, so there was obviously more meaning behind it. Maybe it was because we all know that she died, so maybe they just put "and they lived happily," as in they lived happily just for 24 years. I just didn't like that bit. I like the special effects in this story. I think the acting is very good from everyone. I think this is definitely one of the better Christmas stories, and it's much better than what Russell T Davies puts out. Davies puts out a lot of childish ones. This one was more of a teenager, adult type of story, particularly when you're dealing with a delicate issue of writing out a character, especially at Christmas, which everyone dreads in Doctor Who. So, even though it is a good story and I've had a lot of positive things to say about it, is it a good story for Christmas? Yes, 100%. It has a lot of soapy elements, but it doesn't treat people as stupid, especially young people as stupid. It gives them the chance to think about things and what this actually means to them. So I will give this story a 6.5 out of 10. Actually, no, change my mind. I'll give it a 7 because I love the chemistry between Peter Capaldi and Alex Kingston, and Alex Kingston has a fantastic speech in this. I am hoping to have The Trial of a Time Lord ready very soon. It's taken a long time, The Trial of a Time Lord. However, let me know what you think about this story, The Husbands of River Song. Chat about it, don't shout about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will be back tomorrow with the Crazy Woke News at 4 p.m. Bye-bye.